It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, welcome to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Great show for you today. Great show for you today. A lot of things happening in our country, a lot of things happening in our own backyard. And that's primarily what we do. We bring you neighborhood community news. The political landscape in Pennsylvania, what does it look like and how is it affecting you every day? I'm here at the Laurel Mall at our studio, and before I start taping this show, I spoke to maybe about 25 to 30 people walking the mall. And I asked them about what their thoughts are on what's happening in this country today. What's the feeling? No bias, just asked them a question. 25 of them, average age 62, 63, were disgusted of what's happening in our country today. Actually, and began to unload on me as to what's happening with the FBI, what's happening with our government, what's happening with inflation, what's happening with no respect for our country anymore, why are the radicals taken care of, why are we losing controls of our schools? Heartbreaking stuff. My guest today is no stranger, of course, to the SSP-TV, been a consultant here many times. Charles McElwee, who is the editor of Real Clear Pennsylvania. Charles, how are you?
Sam, it's great to be here. Thank you.
Charles, I guess when I think of what's happening, you're in it every day, okay? Many people who are watching, they don't have time to do what you do. They have a living, and some people would like to enjoy their retirement, which unfortunately they're getting clobbered. But you know, Charles, I this is over 6,000 shows I've done, and I'm becoming dumber every time I do my show. I mean, believe me, for the likes of me, I can't understand why someone would tell me I'm doing good when I know I'm spending more money out of my fixed income. It's harder for me to survive. It's harder for me to get my prescriptions. It's harder for me to pay my energy costs. But yet, President Biden says we're doing great. The economy is doing wonderful. Inflation is under control. But when I go to the grocery store and I see what I used to buy for $1.99, I'm now paying $3.99. What I used to buy for $12.99 a pound, I'm paying $18.99 a pound. And that, if I was spending $100 a week on groceries, I'm now spending $150 and getting the same amount. Energy costs, etc. So it seems to me that, are we being brainwashed, or am I just absolutely stupid?
There's a total gap between what the Biden administration is touting, Bidenomics, right? And that is their defining argument for the 24 campaign, that Bidenomics is working. But it completely conflicts with the reality on the ground and how Americans feel in their own communities, including in Hazleton. And that reality is one that you just described, one of profound unhappiness, financial hardship, and it doesn't relate to what the Biden presidency is touting. It's true that we are reshoring, that manufacturing is coming back. Semiconductor plants, for example, are opening, including one in Schuylkill County. But all this reshoring, manufacturing, really the heart of, let's say, the Trump 2016 message, that economic populist message that he touted at the time, in reality, when you have America's credit rating being downgraded, when you have, as you noted, energy prices increasing, grocery bills rising, inflation going up, mortgage rates going up, and people are essentially making less now than they did, let's say, in 2019, which seems like this halcyon year, this great year before the pandemic set in and we just have marched down this depressive path. And the numbers show in the polls that Americans don't approve of where the country is headed. What that means for 24 remains to be seen.
Why are we why I use the term, why are we being brainwashed? Maybe that's the wrong term, but I'm being brainwashed. When I see headlines telling me how great Biden's doing, and when I turn on the liberal media stations, I call them liberal because I don't see a balance there other than Newsmax or Fox, and here again, oh, Sam, you're Republican, conservative. No, I'm looking at looking what you guys do, okay, real clear politics. I mean, I could believe what I'm doing because you present the facts. So they begin to tell me this. And then what also troubles me is, as you just presented all these things that these people are hurting with, why do they keep telling me I'm doing better when these people are suffering? The other thing is, where are our local, I know where Muser is. I mean, he's there hammering all the time, telling us we have a problem here. Thank God we had Congress. This is what doing with committees, okay. But I don't hear from Cartwright, who is a Democrat. I don't hear from Casey, but I do see them in the paper all the time, and I do see them on television all the time, and I see how wonderful they, but I don't hear them talking about the real issues that affect everyday lives. I mean, am I picking on them or what?
No, it's this fog, right? I mean, the sense of delirium. And I think part of the problem is Americans were forced to enter online life when the pandemic set in. Everybody was living virtually. And some Americans have not left that virtual life. And that's especially the case for people who are remote working, especially in suburban areas. They're no longer going into cities. They are working remotely in their own homes, and it detaches them from what's going on out there. So in these suburban areas that had already been going democratic, in those areas where you have remote workers, their media consumption is fragmented. They're getting it from different areas, especially social media, but they're not going to places that are directly affected by the consequences of this period that we live in. And that removes them from reality. So to them, Bidenomics sounds great. But when you go to somewhere like the Hazleton area where restaurants struggle to find workers, where there is a workforce crisis, where we are dealing with so many social and economic concerns, it completely conflicts with the message being brought out by the Biden administration, and that's what's leading to the surge of Republican voters in this area, for example, but it's also assuring a Democratic ascendance in the suburban areas where those remote workers are.
Do you ever belong to a club?
I have.
What club?
Well, I mean, the Greater Hazleton Historical Societies one, yeah, vice president, yeah.
So if you belong to Rotary or Lions or any club you go into, they have a preamble or they have a mission statement. The mission statement says this is what the Lions Club's all about, this is what Rotary's all about, this is what JC, whatever the club is. So you live by that mission if you're going to join that club. Am I correct in saying that?
So true.
Okay. So now you have the Democrat platform, and they could Google this, and if you read that platform, it really is not really what I think is really in tune, because when you look at what they're for and you see what's happening in this country, you say, well, wait a minute. How is it possible? My mother switched to become a Republican at 87 years old. Why? How do I belong to a party, she said, Butchie, when they're out there killing unborn babies and they're allowing this to happen? I want to belong to a party like I used to belong to when the Democrats were Democrats, where they had respect for the unborn baby. They had respect for people. They had respect for policemen. They had respect for our government, okay? And we're seeing the radicals taking over. I talked to people about Hazleton, a great town. They're afraid to go into Hazleton. I don't know why. Is it perception or whatever? I have no idea. Okay, and it's just like people say, my God, Sam, it's the city's falling apart, but we have a great police department. You know, these people are out there working hard. Why is that?
Well, if you want to apply that local example, right. I mean, people drive in Hazleton and they see what's around them, and it's a feeling of despair because there's great pride in this area, and whether it's the issue or perception of crime, whichever, either way, crime is happening. And then you have the warehousing proliferation in the area. So people, it's funny, Sam, you talk, like the Democratic Party, for example, is about, they talk about climate change, like it's which is really an abstraction, because people aren't opposed to environment issues and conservation. In fact, people would love to see Bidenomics clean up the Little Nescopec, for example, all that acid mine drainage. People would love to see the woods preserved in places where they went huckleberry or mushroom picking growing up, instead of being wiped out for yet another warehouse. So people, all those people like your mother who were Democrat becoming Republican, they actually are the conservationists. But you have the Biden administration touting climate issues within the framework of solar panels and things that don't relate to people on the ground, and especially when their energy prices continue to go up. So back to your point about the mission statement, we live in a time when the mission statements aren't factoring into anything. They're not even addressed. People forget their missions.
I've been talking about this for years. Vote for the person and understand what that person is going to do for not only you, but for your town, for your community. And we still have people out there today, right here in Schuylkill County, Luzerne County, that McElwee, he's an Irishman, vote for him. Lesante, he's an Italian, vote for him. And he comes from a big family. And you know, his brother, sister's mother's cousin was this, that. And all of a sudden, and look at the mess. Look at the mess we've been in. That's the budgets, the increase in taxes. I've been hearing about school taxes. How about these people who are paying school taxes, don't have one child going to school, but are getting hammered because of the increase in school taxes? Maybe sometimes if you're having increases, well, the administration has to work within the budget, but sometimes the budget has a problem. So here's that senior citizen again, gets hammered and punished because they paid for their home, but yet we have other people in this area who have a lot of kids going to school, which is fine, not paying 1 cent. Is that fair?
No, it is fair, and that's where that's why you're seeing this political realignment occurring in the greater Hazleton area. That place that was Democrat, that was a place that was a rich pool of votes for the Democratic Party at one time, especially among working class voters, that's no longer the case, because the Republican Party, its future really does lie in places like here where people have those economic concerns. They're relatively conservative on social issues, but they see the absurdity of the economics, and they were concerns once shared by the Democratic Party. That's no longer the case, and that's why Luzerne County alone is on a rapid path to having a GOP majority among voter registration, I would say, within the next year or two.
My friends, I'm talking to Charles McElwee. He is the editor of Real Clear Pennsylvania. Any one of you who think that you have a different opinion that I have or whatever, please, my email is sam@ssptv.com. I'm more than happy to bring you on. You tell me where I'm wrong. You tell me where, because I saw pain, and the people I interviewed today, I saw the pain in their faces. People who are veterans, people who worked hard all their lives, are trying to enjoy their retired life, and they can't. You know why? We put wrong people in office who are controlling our lives, and we're afraid to address it. We're afraid to make an enemy because Sammy Lesante's a nice guy. We got to vote for him, but maybe I know nothing about that. Don't vote for a person like that. Especially school directors. Let's get these school directors on and let them tell us, what do they feel about our educational system? What are they going to do to our kids? Look what's happening in the country today. That's how the radicals take over. Be back after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. 24/7 SSPTV.com. Also Rumble. Have a lot of our shows there. Anything you need to talk to me about is sam@ssptv.com. My guest is Charles McElwee. He's the editor of Real Clear Pennsylvania. You know, it's a sad thing, Charles, when you have to say, in order to get votes to keep these people in office, the Democrats are their philosophy right now, or their old goal is abortions. All right? We're going to continue on abortions. We'll kill your babies for you. Vote for us, the Democrats, because those Republicans want to protect those little unborn babies, okay? And when you see how sick this is, not about vote for me because these are my experiences, this is what I could do for my area, but I'm going to be for abortions. And and then they throw this women's reproductive thing at you, okay? Which Biden and Casey, Irish Catholics getting away with all of that. I mean, it just, how do you vote? How do you want to go after? I mean, when I see a number of doctors who are in the medical profession who are promoting the Democrats, there's a lot of good doctors who are, other doctors, but I don't understand this.
Well, when it comes to the trend among doctors, I have a forthcoming report on the transformation of healthcare politics, how hospitals that are opening throughout Pennsylvania, healthcare systems that continue to expand, draw employees, and then in turn draw doctors, nurses, etc. The medical profession is now a reliable Democratic constituency in suburbia in Pennsylvania, in places like the Harrisburg area or greater Philadelphia. And in those regions, abortion, as you know, that is a motivating issue of concern among voters in those areas. And that is the playbook that the Democratic Party followed in the 22 cycle. At this point last year, analysts believe that abortion alone, the Dobbs decision that came out by the Supreme Court last summer, would not be the motivating factor that would lead suburban voters to assure victory of Democratic candidates, including in Pennsylvania. There was skepticism. But the playbook that the Democrats followed turned out to be the one that worked in their favor, and they have continued to go for that playbook. The challenge for Republicans is, for example, in suburban Philly, a congressional district there, a Republican is running against Brian Fitzpatrick, who is the incumbent Republican congressman in the suburbs. He has a moderate position on abortion. The opponent is taking the Mastriano path of last year. Doug Mastriano ran for governor of no exceptions, etc. The problem is, let's say he prevails in the primary against Fitzpatrick. Doubtful, but if he does, that candidate will lose. So is it in the Republican Party's
He will
interest?
lose because he's pro-life.
Pro-life to the Mastriano point of no exceptions, which is something that Dr. Oz, for example, did not do in his Senate race last year.
So when you say no exceptions, you're talking about if the mother's in danger of death?
Life endangerment, rape, or incest. Okay. And Mastriano, when he ran for governor, took the no exceptions path. Oz did not. But when it comes to elections or referendum votes since that time nationally, when Republicans take the Mastriano playbook, they have lost every single time. So my view is, if one is pro-life, it's in their interest to vote for a Republican who may even have a moderate position on abortion, because the alternative is a Democratic victory.
So life doesn't matter. It's, listen, they say, well, Sammy, what, God forbid, if someone in your family was raped or someone incest, etc. Yes. But there's still a human being there. There's still God's creation there, okay? I think with the state of Pennsylvania, we had a Miss Pennsylvania or somebody who was a product of a rape. Okay, here she is, she was part of a rape. Okay, it's a terrible thing. There's no question about it. It's very sad. But is killing that unborn baby, is that the way to do it? Only for your own self-gratification? I don't know. I just feel life is so important that you just have to go along with God gives you, okay? Moving on to the people who are voting for people. I mentioned about school board directors. I mentioned about the mayors, or I will mention mayors, senators, congressmen. I hear this about Congressman Cartwright. Well, he got a lot of money. Got a lot of money, Sam. You know, he's very hard to beat. Well, that's fine, but is that a qualification for you to become a U.S. congressman because you have a lot of money? Okay, I don't know. Is that a qualification versus, you know, what you have to do for your constituents and what you're doing for society? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the sad state of affairs when it comes to modern American politics is that money is the foundation for a viable campaign. So if an incumbent or a candidate has a war chest, for example, against their opponent, it immediately puts them in the upper hand. Now, of course, there are many examples of that going nowhere, and it especially seems to be the case that when candidates have super PACs that raise tons of money, those races don't play out well. The best example, of course, would be 2016 when Jeb Bush had a super PAC and raised like $100 million. How that pan out for him? Because the challenge for the candidate, they are legally required to not coordinate or communicate with the super PAC. So you may have this PAC that's doing all this work, raising all this money in your campaign's interest, but there can't be any coordination. And it doesn't seem to be a model as working well for candidates. So it's a complex issue, but when it comes to congressional races, if Cartwright has the financial upper hand, it already puts him in a favorable position considering that he has held the seat since 2013.
I was told by a person who ran for office in the last gubernatorial race that they hit $1 million, hit the streets of Philadelphia to vote for the Democrats. Vote for Shapiro, vote for Fetterman. $1 million. This was told by a reliable source. I think maybe even on my show, the person mentioned that, and it's just sad when you see that, when you don't really understand who the person is you're voting for, and you're going back to the old school where, you know, he's popular, he has money, you know, etc. And look where the country is. I mean, we're paying the price for that. We're paying the price for ineffective people you put in, school board members, city councilmen, mayors. You put people in because they're nice people and their personalities, but have no concept of what they're doing.
Exactly. There's total inertia. There's total ineffectiveness among people who hold these positions, even at the local level, and that leads to people really be angry at both parties. It transcends partisanship.
Yeah.
They just want people, office holders, who actually respond to their legitimate concerns.
You just said it. One of the persons I asked today said, Sam, it's the same thing with Republicans. You know, some of them are on the swamp as well. Okay, but then it's who's the worst of the worst, you know, in voting. Charles, being where you are every day with Real Clear, Pennsylvania, and they could go online to get your articles, right?
That's right, realclearpennsylvania.com daily.
Right. What advice do you have for the voter? What will you tell a voter now to look for?
I would say, I mean, so at Real Clear Pennsylvania, we're always looking for stories that address overlooked trends that resonate with voters on the ground, with people who are living in communities across Pennsylvania, who are observing things, feeling things that they may not necessarily see in print or online, getting reported. So what they should look for, I mean, in a candidate, somebody who can soberly address their concerns about economics, the social influx. I mean, when it comes to, let's say, a candidate for federal office or state level office, somebody who is really not ideological per se, but somebody who is attuned to issues that confront everyone, whether it is the fact of inflation, that people are living on fixed incomes and struggling to get by, that are observing the decline of their communities, the decline of housing, the fact that even compared to 10 years ago, life is not what it should be. Chronic illnesses are through the roof. Depression is rampant among Americans. We have a true mental health crisis in this country. and in addition to an opioid crisis. And all these issues directly impact everyone. Everybody has been touched by one of these issues, and they're not getting addressed. We have yet to see a solution to this period that we live in, and it's making everyone very unhappy.
Well, you know, I wish I had a magic wand, but I just scratch my head, and when I see what's happening, and I see, you know, why are we letting these people get away what they're getting away with? Why are we letting them punish the police departments and people that are out there trying to help you? You should be giving them more funding. You should be supporting them. Okay, they need that support. They're out there putting their lives at risk every day. Pennsylvania State Police, city policemen, anyone who has a uniform on or was doing that kind of work, they're helping you, they're protecting you, okay? Support them. But what you have, the radicals are taking it away from them.
Right, and on the note of the police, we just had a piece at Real Clear, Pennsylvania by the police director of Ben Salem, which is a large suburban community in Bucks County outside Philadelphia. And that's one example. What he's dealing with, what suburban cops are dealing with. In Philadelphia, there's a driver equity law, which basically means that police cannot pull over vehicles for certain motor code violations. Ones that should and typically do lead to getting pulled to the side of the road. That's not the case in Philadelphia. So the consequences, driver-related crimes are going through the roof in the suburbs, and police chiefs are dealing with it. So that's an example. Overlooked trend.
And who put that into effect? People in
the city of Philadelphia.
Okay, so there you go. So then, and so how do you then support? How can a group of doctors, particularly doctors, say we're going to vote for the Democrats who do this? And there's a lot of doctors say, wait a minute, you know, we can't do this. You know, we have to vote for the person who is not going to do this. And those are the things that drive me crazy. I wish someone would just say, well, Sammy, this is why I think it's okay to kill an unborn baby. This is okay, why I think we should support that's okay. Most of those people don't have to be concerned about income because they're doing very well. But the majority of people in this country who are suffering, those seniors who cannot retire at 65, have to now work 68, 69, 70 years old, who want to enjoy themselves, can't do that because we allow these radicals to happen. That's my opinion. Charles, it's always nice having you on the phone.
So great to be here. Thank you so much, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you guys read about Charles every day on realclearpennsylvania.com, right?
Right.
They're just on top of things. You could trust them. We'll see you next time.